Well, this morning we kick things off. We are talking about special needs children, children with mental health issues as well. And we'd like to highlight the difference between both of them. And just to give you some context, to put this into context, with the report from the JSC on education and the results that 10% of our school population is facing mental illness, it is incumbent on us to train our teachers. So we have Dr. Clay, Dr. Karine Clay is coming to Trinidad to do a 2-day workshop, No Child Left Behind, by training educators here. And joining her, we have Miss Judith Duvertile. She's the principal of the PIDO Learning Center. Good morning, ladies,
Good
and
morning.
welcome.
Thank you.
So it's a pleasure to have you on board with us this morning to talk about this particular issue. So Dr. Karine Clay, you're an educational psychologist.
Yes.
So you've specialized in this particular area, so I
Yes.
think you would be the best suited person to help us to understand what is taking place in terms of the media and the statistics and data that we are being provided with. So first of all, tell us, what is it that you all are having? You all are having a workshop, I understand.
Yes.
Tell us what is it about and what is its purpose.
Okay, the main focus of the workshop is to increase the awareness amongst parents regarding children with autism, ADHD, and learning disabilities, as well as increase the competency among teachers for strategies and approaches to be used in the classroom with this population of kids. And many individuals are not aware of exactly what those things are. So we know within our culture, we see a child acting different, as they would say. A neurotypical child is what we consider the normal child. If that child is all of a sudden not paying attention, not following, being defiant, and all those things, you would find they would be labeled as being bad or don't want to listen. So teachers as well as parents need to know that children have actually specific needs. Every one of them learn differently, and sometimes their brains are rewired differently, and they need to know how to approach that child.
All right. So, Ms. Duvertile, you're the
Yes.
principal of the PIDO Learning Center. Based on what Dr. Clay just said, in terms of professional development among our teaching profession, would you say it is ongoing and it is comprehensive enough?
Well, I would like to say on behalf of the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago, of which I am part, over the years we've had the challenge of getting professionals like Dr. Clay to come to Trinidad, in that we have to raise funds, no assistance from the Ministry of Education in this regard. Whether it be a barbecue, whatever, raise funds, put up, get a professional here for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we have to share that professional among the approximately 36 special schools, which is not the ideal situation. And it is always good to get ongoing training in this area as special schools. And even though the Ministry of Education did speak about inclusion by moving special children to the regular schools, I know for a fact they do not have sufficient staff to make that a reality.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between mental illness, because we're hearing about mental illness, so we're hearing ADHD and learning disabilities. Can you clarify the difference?
Yes. For one, a mental illness, for example, would be someone who is a bipolar, someone who has personality disorders, somebody who is schizophrenic. They have behavior within their emotions and their minds that they have no control over. This might be able to be controlled with medication and things like that, but it goes past just the fact that their brain is rewired differently, or they're not able to understand that a word is individual letters blend phonetically together. It is past that point. And so for someone with ADHD, that child actually is a neurodevelopmental disorder. That child has problems or concerns with impulsiveness. That child is not able to sit still. That child has trouble being able to communicate with the teacher using language. And with autism, this child has issues socially. So the child does not have a disorder where they are not able to, say, for example, need a psychiatrist and control their behavior to the point that it is an endangerment to themselves. Kids that have these disorders and disabilities, it is specific areas like reading, writing, socially interacting with their peers, communicating with others. Those are the areas that they have concerns with. And those are areas that are able to be corrected with strategies that the teacher and the parent would do together. A mental illness cannot be corrected in that way.
Environment.
Yeah,
Okay.
not just with that. Yeah.
Now, with the report from the JSC on education and the results that 10% of our school population is facing mental illness, were they correct when they identified it as being mental illness, or did they incorporate a lot of learning disabilities in there?
I'm feeling as though they did incorporate some of the learning disabilities within that, because many individuals have that tendency. Now, don't get me wrong. Trinidad is here at this point of now implementing inclusion. Every country was there at some point, as we know. So even within the US, they did the same thing at that point. They clumped everyone. You were different, then you were mentally ill, right? And they even would put them in institutions at that time. So we know that everyone has to get there. So we know that we have to give equal education to all students. We know everyone should get these resources. But if we start clumping it together with mental illness, it in a way kind of removes it from education. It removes it from the need for the ministry or educators to deal with it, because a teacher cannot deal with a child with mental illness. A psychiatrist has to do that. A medical physician has to do that. So in clumping it together, it almost seems as though they are removing the responsibility if they clump all of the kids in one.
Wow. Ms. David-Tile, what are the implications of doing something like this, having them clump everything together? How does it impact the school system?
Well, the thing about it is, recently we started doing IEPs in schools, and teachers were taught how to do an IEP. The thing about it is, because it is individual education plan for that child based on the person that needs to come in, whether the psychologist or so, it must be based on what that child needs. Because, for example, in the States, there were IEPs that were done, and it was very rigid in terms of the time factor and what was needed. And there were parents who took the Ministry of Education to court because X, Y, and Z was not done within that specific time. So you have to be careful, you have to be knowledgeable about what you're doing when you do an IEP. You cannot lump all the children together. The theme of the 2-day conference, No Child Left Behind, that actually is based on a UN report about universal primary education from the MDGs from 2000. And so this is indeed in line with that. And so you cannot lump all the children together. You must keep an individual plan and update it accordingly.
Yes.
Which is time consuming, labor intensive.
It is. And teachers as well as policymakers and parents need to understand that these children, we have to help them rewire their brains, or create new neural pathways, right? So we are looking at neuroplasticity, we're looking at attachment, how this child interacts with the teacher, how the teacher interacts with the child, and we're also looking at the ecology, meaning all the systems that's surrounding the child. How do those come together collaboratively to help this child? And so individuals will think, oh my goodness, it's one child or 2 children. No, 1 out of 4 children in the classroom would be identified with ADHD. And that's just ADHD. We have many high-performing autistic kids and many kids with LDs, the learning disabilities. So when they come to this workshop on Thursday and Friday on the 23rd and 24th this week, they would be able to get not only the foundational theoretical knowledge of this, but they would also be able to get practical strategies and practical approaches that they're able to use right now in the classroom and at home. When my child is having a meltdown, oh God, what am I supposed to do? At that moment, you will find out what are the things in the environment that have just impacted that child that has caused the meltdown, and that the child is not being defiant and is not acting up, right?
Now, in terms of this workshop, so it's a 2-day workshop, can you provide us with a breakdown in terms of what's on the agenda?
Sure. On day 1, we're going to be focused in on specifically what is autism, what is ADHD, what is learning disability. And so we're also going to go into the theoretical foundation of that, and we're going to see the breakdown of what that looks like for parents what that looks like at home, and for teachers what that looks like. So teachers would be able to also identify and know the different assessments that they can use. Many teachers are not informed on what exactly are the flags that really this kid is not just bad or lazy or doesn't or depressed or other things is happening. There's something here that we need to dig deeper into. That would be the focus of day 1. Day 2, we are taking all of the different specific approaches, utilizing the foundation of neuroplasticity, attachment, and ecology, which is the tri-optimal learning model. We are going to take that foundation and we're going to share hands-on activities where teachers are able and parents are able to see, how am I supposed to stop a meltdown? How am I supposed to motivate this child who does not seem to be motivated to learn? How am I supposed to encourage this child to be able to take the step and actually want to read and not start acting up right before reading is supposed to happen so that they could get sent to the principal's office? All those resources will be provided at this workshop.
So who is expected to attend? Have you all reached out to the Ministry of Education, or have they contacted you to probably have a collaboration where teachers in the government service could probably attend? Well, who's expected to attend?
I would say we did contact the ministry at least about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and sad to say did not get any response outside of, we have received your email and thank you, and we will get back in contact with you as soon as we can. So that's what I got from the ministry. I was also very, very disappointed, and I won't mention the names of the corporates, but we did send out letters to various corporations within Trinidad, and considering that these kids are our future, regardless of how you want to look at it, we are not going to be around forever. These children are replacing us in various different ways. If they are not prepared, they are not going to be able to compete globally. And then where does that put us as a country? Where does that put us? So my thing is, if we want to have an effective working class, we have to educate them. And we're not all going to know things that we knew. Say, for example, we went to school in the 1980s. Okay, things have changed since then. So if we are not educating our teachers every single year on the newest things that are approaches that are happening within their field, we're doing them a disservice. I know for myself, I wouldn't want a surgeon who used to do a C-section the old-fashioned way, right? Then my entire stomach would be cut in a T. I would like a surgeon who is up on all of the new fandangled strategies and, techniques that are being done, so I have the least minimal scar. Why would you not want that for your educators? We are just as important.
Wow. All right, so Ms. Duvital, tell us a little bit about the PIDO Learning Center.
Sure. PIDO Learning Center started as a school to get young men off the street and in school. And I told Dr. Clay that I did a 10-year of education pilot project with the 300 children that passed through the school, a decade of education, and one of my students even got distinctions in music. However, under the PP government in 2013, the whole facility on St. Paul Street was closed. And so my school is still closed because it's not funded, was never funded, except for funding from the Canadian High Commission for capital expenditure. And so the furniture and everything is there collecting dust, to tell you the truth. But I do assist parents with referrals and do assessments like learning style assessments, reading age assessments to help children that attend other schools. And I'm also running a bartering book program. In fact, I have 19 boxes of books to give away. If there are principals out there who need books, I barter books, because the textbook rental program, as you know, the government cut back on that program by $119 million. And so schools, parents, they need textbooks, and I give away textbooks. And so I have 19 boxes to commemorate the 19 years of PIDO. It's a registered entity, so we are still functioning. Look at how I'm assisting Dr. Clay. And to add to what Dr. Clay said about the learning disabilities, we also have children who are slow. It's not a learning disability, but they're slow. However, the techniques that I used with learning disabilities helps the slow learner as well.
All right.
Yes, and we would also like to give a contact phone number as well, so people can contact us. We are using my number for the time, which is 333-3173. You want to attend the conference, you want information, you want to register, you can call principals who would like to get textbook, spider boxes. Please call me and you'll get it.
Sure. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the date and the time of the event. Where exactly is it?
It's at Bishop Anstey High School here in Port of Spain, and it's from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the Thursday and Friday, the 23rd and the 24th of November. Sorry.
All right. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the school system and how is it that, you know, a lot of the times we look at students and you may think that they something is wrong with them, but you don't identify there is a learning disability. But this child has a great potential. And if this is channeled in the right way, this child is actually a genius.
Yes. Kids with ADHD, they are above average.
They have strengths that the average person does not have. Tell us about
exactly.
that. And have we as a society been able to identify those strengths and put them to the right use, or create the environment where they could be groomed properly?
Well, there are a battery of tests that obviously to specifically know their areas of strengths and weaknesses that they have to be assessed to do. And the psychologist is able to do that. It, of course, begins with the pediatrician according to the age of the child. But the parent and the teacher would see that there's a flag. Something, as you just put it, is wrong. I know something is wrong, but I don't know exactly what it is. So you would find that those kids, once we know their areas of weakness, usually it's either, if it's an LD, which is the learning disability, it can be dyslexia, which is reading, dyscalculia, which is math, and dysgraphia, which is writing, right? So once we identify where those weaknesses are, then we know which strategies that we need to do with the child to help strengthen those weaknesses. But those children will have a weakness in one area and a great strength in the other. So what it is that, of course, in some of our cultures, we find we are a shaming society. So we always want to put down the areas that are weak. And it actually should be the opposite. They should be, say, for example, a child is weak in reading and they're strong in math. There's reading and math. We can incorporate the strength and the love for math to help increase their reading. So some of those things and more, they would get more details on those, of course, on Thursday and Friday. But those are some things. Children with autism, exactly. Teachers will learn exactly how to identify a child with autism. Say just briefly for 1 minute, you see a child, they're just sitting there, you're calling them and they're not answering. Not to say this is every child, but a parent will say, oh, this child is being defiant. You're pointing at something and the child doesn't follow your eyes when you're pointing at it. You know, so that might be just a flag. You know, the child has issues socially. So there are different identifiers that would just be like check, check, check. Same thing with ADHD. There's a checklist. You'll go check, check, check. The parents will do one. The teacher will do one. The pediatrician will take both of those together, look at them, look for what themes are emerging that are common, and then they would refer the child to a psychologist to do the remaining battery of tests, right? So we know within Trinidad, and to be perfectly honest, even within the U.S., the resources are limited for individuals who are taking care of kids with special needs, for schools who have to, through inclusion, give the proper training and things like that for working with children with special needs. It's expensive to actually conduct those battery of tests. Is very expensive. So definitely we need to have outside organizations supplementing some of these things. They may not be able to do 100%. We may not be there yet to do 100%. But if there are resources globally through the UN, through UNESCO, and through other organizations, then why are we not doing at least even 60%? But they need to do more than just 30%. So, at this time, and then what are the steps to be able to access this information? So I do know we have student support services here in Trinidad and Tobago. I do know that their mind and their hearts are in the right place of wanting to move this forward, but they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough staff. They don't have enough psychologists. They don't have enough individuals there to actually start implementing the change. The change has to happen at ground zero with parents and teachers. If the teacher is not buying into this, it's not happening because they're the ones in the classroom.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. And added to that,
Yes.
Dr. Clay, in terms of assessments, we have the learning style assessment,
Yes.
which she will also mention. There are different ways that we learn,
Yeah.
whether adult or child, whether you need to see it, visual learner, hear it, audio learner, or kinesthetic. And so each teacher needs to be aware that there's a different way to present the same lesson. Not the same day, but over a period of time, a week or 2 weeks, you come back with the lesson in a different way because all the children in the class will not learn the same way.
Right.
And then you have the reading age assessment because a child could be 12 years old but reading at the age of a 10-year-old or 15 years old. How do you know? You could be teaching over the head of the child. So you do the reading age assessment.
Wow, so this is absolutely critical. Closing
Yes.
comments. Why should people be a part of this, and what has been the response so far?
Well, sadly, the response has not been phenomenal. Again, because individuals, actually one person asked, is this really going to go through? Is this really going to happen? And so I would say to you, be it a parent or an educator, that if you would like to know how to help every child in your classroom, if you would like to be an effective educator, if you would like to grow in your profession, please come to this workshop. You will get the resources that you need.
Ladies, thank you so much for being part of our program.
Thank
It was
you.
definitely a
Thank
pleasure
you.
chatting with
Thank
you, and
you.
we really hope that people turn out and take advantage of this opportunity.